Hello, it's Tuesday, the 21st of February 2012. This is episode 3 of learning about judging Magic the Gathering, or Magic the Judging as I started to call this series. Hello! We're going to talk about Two-Headed Giant today. If you want to play along at home, you want to pick up the Two-Headed Giant FAQ. So let's show you something about the Two-Headed Giant FAQ. There's quite a few versions of it. If you Google for it, the top Google hit is an out-of-date official Wizards document from 2007. I don't suggest using that one. That's what it looks like. You can see at the top. Maybe you can see better if I zoom in a bit more. You can see that it... scrolling fail. Here we go. It says, quite helpfully, that it's a Two-Headed Giant FAQ from May the 1st, 2007. If you see that, throw that document in the bin, go and look for another one. There's undoubtedly a better one for you to find. Chatting about in the stream before I started recording, Charlie pointed me to, from the Wizards Play Network official homepage, you can find a Two-Headed Giant Tournament FAQ that's from January the 25th this year, far more up to date, and it's a perfectly workable FAQ. It is 7 pages long, but at least it's up to date. It's fine. No worries with that one. But the one that I'm actually going to be taking you through tonight, the one that my card examples come from, if you want to be following this one at home, is... I'll tell you how I found it. I found it by searching 2HG FAQ Fabian Peck. That directed me to this page, and here's a picture of Fabian for you. Hi, Fabian. It directed me to this page from internationalmagicjudges.net, where the DCI Judge List monthly summary is, which I should know about because I'm involved in podcasting it these days. But that's where I found the link to the Two-Headed Giant FAQ on the Judge Wiki, which eventually led me to this PDF here, which starts with Two-Headed Giant 2HG Limited Summary from June 21st, 2011. It's my favourite of the 3 documents I've showed you so far, because this one is only actually 2 sides of A4 long. If you were to print this out, you get it on a single sheet of paper quite happily. So if you're in a mad scramble, you've suddenly been asked to do some Two-Headed Giant judging, and you've never done it before, this is the document to go for. Excellent. So I'm not actually going to have the summary up on my screen. I couldn't find a decent way to zoom in on it and have it readable for you guys, so I'm just going to talk you through it. If you want to have it up on your screen, Google for it now, get it ready, and that'll be fantastic. What I'm going to have up on screen is the card examples I'm going to be talking through, and I'll be going through just in the order of that FAQ. So let's get going. Two-Headed Giant. There is a picture of a Two-Headed Giant, in case you've never seen one. Actually, it's not. It's just me with some mirror trickery. Sorry to dispel the illusion there already for you. Two-Headed Giant. This is not a way to play Two-Headed Giant, by the way. You need 2 actual people to play Two-Headed Giant. It's a multiplayer format in which 2 teams of 2 players play together in a single game. The players on each team, they share a life total, and they play with a shared turn. But with the exceptions of life total, poison counters, the rest of your team's resources, so that's like the cards you've got in your hand, the mana you can generate from tapping your lands, and so on, they're not shared. So it's just life total, poison counters, and the turn structure is kind of shared between the 2 players. And that's it. But that itself is good enough to make quite a compelling variant of Magic play that's really good for casual play. And it's why it's an often used format at pre-releases and launch parties, because essentially it's playing Magic with your mates against 2 other people who are probably your mates as well. So first up, a word on the organisation and structure of a tournament, which, after all, if you're judging one of these tournaments, it's one of the first things you're going to come across. You need to have a minimum of 4 teams, which is 8 players. It's the same for any DCI sanctioned tournament. You can't run Magic events with less than 8 players and have them officially count towards Planeswalker points and so on. And if you have that minimum of 4 teams, then it's just going to be a 2-round event, which is... It feels kind of weird because everything else gives you a 3-round event, but sure, that's fine. If you're going to play sealed, well, I will get the document up on screen in case it's large enough for you to read. Two-Headed Giant has a 60-minute recommended deck construction time with 8 boosters for sealed, and 6 boosters for draft. I'll talk you through the two-headed giant draft format in a minute, but it's most commonly played as a sealed format. If you're going to play it sealed, then each player has to build 2 40-card minimum decks. So, like in normal sealed deck Magic, you can have more than 40 cards in a deck if you want to, but 40 is your minimum, from your card pool on basic lands. But the card pool is shared between the 2 players. You don't have, like, I open 4 boosters and build from it, and he opens 4 boosters and builds from it, and we somehow build 2 decks like that. No, we open the 8 boosters together and we make 2 decks from the 8 boosters. Any cards that you didn't put in either player's deck can only be accessed by effects that refer to cards outside the game, such as Spawnsire of Ulamog is one. The classic example is the Wishes. If you've been playing Magic for any real amount of time, with especially with, are they in the modern format? No, I don't think they are in modern. But if you were playing through the old extended at least, or if you played any Legacy, you're probably familiar with the Wishes. There's a whole cycle of cards that go and fetch cards from outside the game and bring them in. In tournament play, they were always ruled to just go and catch cards from your sideboard only. So there was no point turning up to a tournament with a collection of thousands of cards with the hope that your Burning Wish would go and find the right one. But in this one, we don't actually call the cards outside of the deck a sideboard. I'll come to why in a moment. But those cards can only be accessed by effects that refer to cards outside the game. So Spawnsire of Ulamog is a card that lets you cast Eldrazi cards you own from outside the game. So if you're playing Rise of the Eldrazi Limited, two-headed giant, you could go and find your Eldrazi that you weren't playing out of the cards in the pool that you weren't playing. Okay. Almost as an aside, I'm not going to really focus on it. Two-headed giant can be run as a draft format. The way you do this, you put the 4 teams around the table. Teammates can communicate with each other during the draft, which again tends to lend to it being a bit of a more casual atmosphere than normal. Each team opens a booster. You pick 2 cards, you pass the rest on. So the 12 cards that you receive, you pick 2 more, you pass the rest on, you pick 2 more. So you go through the booster 2 picks at a time, and again, those cards go together into a shared pool from which you build the 2 decks. So it's great. If you open up a booster and there's 2 amazing red cards, you can take both of them and get them into your amazing red deck. Or if you're maybe going for a red deck and a blue deck and you see an amazing red card and an amazing blue card, you can pick both of them. So it's a little harder to do like signalling, other strategic things you might worry about in drafts. But again, that lends to it being a much more casual format. It also means you get through the booster a fair bit quicker, which, as you're going through 6 boosters, is certainly welcome. Anything that gets you through that draft quicker is handy. In limited events, players may play more than 4 of a card if they have them in their pool. This is true of ordinary sealed deck events anyway, but it's kind of more true in a two-headed giant because you're opening 8 packs for the pool. The chances of you having more than 4 of a given card are just that bit higher, so it will come up. Chat's reminding me that Glittering Wish is in fact modern legal, although I don't see modern two-headed giant being a reasonable format. I'll come back to two-headed giant constructed right at the end of this. Seldom played, and we'll have a bit of a think about why. Teams can rebuild their decks from their entire card pool between rounds, even swapping entire decks between teammates. I think this line is aimed very much at the regular rules enforcement level where deck lists aren't used, which again goes with the idea that two-headed giant is played at pre-releases, it's played at release events. We call it continuous construction for regular pre-releases, where you can just rebuild your deck in between rounds as much as you like. Teams you don't have to like take ownership of a card as soon as you've played it in your deck. You can swap around as much as you like, which again lends to the casual atmosphere that two-headed giant normally has. Last couple of bits of tournament logistics then. Two-headed giant rounds are 50 minutes as normal, but if they do go to time, you only play 3 extra turns. The reason for there being only 3 extra turns in the end of match procedure, so when you hear someone going, ladies and gentlemen, that's time on the round, active team finish their turn, you now have 3 additional turns to complete the match. The reason there's only 3 extra turns is because two-headed giant games take a long time. The reason they take a long time is because players like to talk. They like to talk a lot, and when you allow that, turns slow down. As a result, the match is just won by the first game that's won. It's a first to one. You might hear it referred to as a single game match. It's slightly misleading to think of it as a single game match, because what happens if you draw that game? Well, that's why it's not a single game match. It's the first to one win. If you draw a game of Two-Headed Giant, and you've got enough time to start up a second game and get that through to completion, then brilliant, that will work. And if you win the second game, you'll win the match. In exactly the same way that you can draw a game when you're already at 1-1 in a regular match, and that doesn't suddenly end because you're at 1-1 on a draw. If you've got time to fit a fourth game in, you do. So nothing changes just because this is Two-Headed Giant. Players may not sideboard. So this is why, again, I was not calling it a sideboard earlier. The cards that you don't put into your pool are outside the game. They're not in the sideboard because there is no sideboarding, even if you have a second game. Crucial. Finally, players on a team win or lose together. If an effect says a player loses the game, then the team loses the game. The other head can't continue playing on their own. If you imagine a two-headed giant with one of the heads savagely ripped off through damage or even through poison, can you imagine the one head carrying on by itself? I can't. No, either both heads are in the game or they're not. You win or lose as a team. A team on 0 or less life or has 15 or more poison counters loses the game. And we all know by now, don't we know that you lose the game by state-based actions there? But episode 1 if you want state-based actions, yeah. 15 or more poison counters losing the game. I'm pretty sure this is a recent development. I don't remember exactly when it came in. For a long time, you only needed the regular 10 poison counters to kill you. But now we eventually decided that two-headed giants are a little bit more resilient to poison than that, and it takes 15 to kill them. Platinum Angel is a card that says you can't lose the game. Well, if you can't lose the game, that means your team can't lose the game. And if your opponents can't win the game, that means the opposing team can't win the game, because you win or lose as a team. You're completely inseparable. Your win and your loss is just a one thing. And another piece of tournament logistics here, it says players may communicate freely with each other. So all of this kind of thinking that you want to do with your partner head, you can be done totally out in the open, absolutely no problem. You can see all the information your teammate has. You're allowed to look at the cards in their hand. You're allowed to look at anything they're allowed to look at. So if they play a duress, well, actually that causes the opponent to reveal a hand so everyone can see it anyway. But hideaway lands, let's talk. Yeah, let's say hideaway lands. They allow you only the controller of the hideaway land to have a look. But if they're your partner, then you can show them too. You can see your cards in hand, you can see face-down cards. Strategy discussions should, however, be done in a brief, timely manner. I will probably end up having to visit Slow Play in this stream series at some point, and when I do, I might come back to this two-headed giant line. But bear in mind that two-headed giant is generally played as quite a casual format. It's not particularly hyper competitive. There was a two-headed giant draft pro tour once. It was a few years ago. It hasn't been done again. I think the reason for that is that two-headed giant is supposed to be a much more casual event than that. So it's okay to let loose and have a bit of strategy going on. You've got your normal 50 minutes to complete only one game. That's a lot of time to get one game done in. So you don't want to be beating your players over the head with like, oh, hurry up already, because two-headed giant is supposed to be a slower, casual format where you can chat with your mates about Magic. But there's limits to everything, and I'm sure everyone is quite capable of thinking of somebody who would abuse that if they were allowed. Okay, starting the game. I've skipped one of my card examples. Naughty Paul. Slap wrist. Leech's Mirror is a card that says if you would lose the game, then, instead, shuffle your hand to graveyard and all permanents you own into your library, and then draw 7 cards, and your life total becomes 20. So, a couple of things there. If you would lose the game, instead you do something else other than losing the game. That means your team doesn't lose. But for the rest of this card, the you means yours. You shuffle your hand, your graveyard, and permanents you own into your library. Then you draw 7 cards. Your teammate doesn't share any of this action. But your life total becomes 20, and you only have one life total. Like, the players don't individually have life totals in Two-Headed Giant. There is one life total for the team. So if your life total becomes 20, it essentially means that your team's life total becomes 20, which might mean you can carry on with the game. Of course, if you've lost because your teammate got decked, then that's not going to work out very well. And as we saw in another episode, if you lost because of poison counters, then Leech's Mirror isn't going to save you anyway. Make a Leech's Mirror reprint that deals with Infect. Please, please. Cool. Each team starts with 30 life. Why 30? I don't know. It's a number that works. It arrived there by some trial and error. It changed around a bit. For some point, Two-Headed Giant team started with 40, way back when the format was first devised, which I think was back in 2005, if my memory is working better than my speech currently is. La la la. But it dropped to 30 quickly after the format was first explored, and it seems to be happy there. Like I say, we've just fiddled about with the poison counters. We need 15 to kill you, so I think we're pretty happy with 30 life being about right for Two-Headed Giant now. Neither player on the team going first draws a card for the first turn. Each player, though, because it's a multiplayer game, it's a game with more than 2 people in it, even though there's only 2 teams, you do get a free mulligan. So you can mulligan 7 the first time. Then further mulligans result in 1 card less being drawn each time, just like normal. And mulligan decisions alternate between teams as normal. Each player on team decides whether to mulligan simultaneously. Well, obviously, like, they can't both go like 3, 2, 1, keep, or something like that. That's not going to work. But you don't get to mulligan and actually resolve your mulligan before your teammate decides, yeah, you know what, I'm going to mulligan to. You make the decisions with your 7, and if one's going to mulligan, the other's got to make the decision before they've seen the second 7, and then you've got to make decisions before you've seen the 6, and so on. That's it. That gets the game underway. You've done your mulligan decisions. Neither player on the team going first draws on that first turn. And yeah, you've got your free mulligan if you want it. Combat is the next thing that you normally get questions about. Attackers are declared as a team and are attacking the opposing team or a planeswalker, not a specific player on that team. So I brought up Jackal Familiar because of his rule text. Jackal Familiar can't attack or block alone. So why is it important that attackers are declared as a team? Because if I have a Jackal Familiar and my partner has a creature they wish to attack with, then Jackal Familiar isn't attacking alone. If my teammates' creatures are attacking, they're considered together. Fine. I sadly, last week in my combat phase stream, didn't get to attacking and blocking restrictions like I wanted to. There will be a part 2 to that stream coming up later, in which we'll visit these kinds of abilities in much more detail. But for now, know in Two-Headed Giant that the attack block legality is applied to the team's declaration as a whole. So if Jackal Familiar from one head and another creature from the other head are going to attack together, then, well, that's it, exactly it. They are attacking together. Jackal Familiar isn't attacking alone, so it's not breaking its rule, which is fantastic. Creatures with Landwalk are unblockable if either player on the opposing team controls the appropriate land type. So if I've got an Emerald Oryx in play and I attack, if either of the heads on my opposing team have forests, then Emerald Oryx is unblockable. Hooray! So it's permissive in nature, which is nice. Both players on the opposing team are considered to be defending players, but if an effect asks for the defending player, then, well, we've decided it's a bit unfair to select both of them as the defending player, so the controller of the effect has to choose one of them. As an example, I give you Thraximundar. Nice legendary creature, often seen on the field as a commander general. But in Two-Headed Giant, when he attacks, the defending player sacrifices a creature. You can kind of see, because it's written in the singular, that it can really only apply to a defending player. So you've got to pick one. When you attack, I'm going to attack that team over there, and I'm going to pick a player, sacrifice a creature. I'm going to say you over there. I should note that it's entirely possible for, let's say I've got a Planeswalker in play, and Thraximundar is going to attack that Planeswalker. You might think, quite reasonably, that because Thraxamundar is attacking my Planeswalker, that I control, just me, that I would have to be declared the defending player, and therefore I'd have to do the sacrifice. But that's not true. The defending player can be chosen by either head. It's perfectly legal to attack one of my Planeswalkers, but tell my partner to sacrifice a creature. Perfectly legal. Yay, Thraxamundar. Good card. Awesome card. If a creature is attacking your team, it is also attacking you. And I give you as an example, Blessed Reversal. You gain 3 life for each creature that's attacking you. So if the opposing team throws 10 creatures your way and you cast this, well, all 10 of those creatures are considered to be attacking you because they're attacking your team. So because they're all attacking you, all 10 creatures, you're going to gain 30 life. Hooray! Life gain is cool again. If an effect prevents a creature attacking a player, again, because you're always attacking the team and it's considered to be attacking you, then it would prevent the creature from attacking the team as a whole. Teferi's Moat is an example of that. So if I choose white, then white creatures can't attack me. But if they can't attack me, then they can't attack my team at all, because if they're attacking the team, they are attacking me. So brilliant. Protection from being attacked. Shouldn't say protection, should I? It's a bit of an overloaded word. Things that would stop attackers will protect the whole team, which is brilliant. I did at some point have I had Norn's Annex in here as an example. I've taken it away for some reason. I must have decided Teferi's Moat was better. But let's say you had Norn's Annex. That says that you've got to pay some kind of cost for the attackers to be able to attack you. And again, because to attack you involves attacking the team, then every attacking creature would have to pay that cost. So yeah, pretty good. However, whilst you attack the team as a whole, you've got your 2 heads here, and you attack into both of them, and so they block together as well. Combat damage itself is only assigned to one of the heads, and this is something that's often brushed over by players. You don't necessarily care which head is receiving damage, but sometimes you do. Let's say one of the attackers is Hypnotic Spectre, because when it deals damage to an opponent, that player discards a card at random. That player does. Which player? Well, what probably happens, what almost certainly happens, is the player attacks with the Hypnotic Spectre, it gets through, it deals its damage, and they go, "Oh, Judge, which player do I have to make discard here?" And that's when you would tell them, of course, that it's your choice. You can choose which head to damage, so you can choose which player is going to be affected by the triggered ability here. Hypnotic Spectre is very much a proactive kind of thing. It's the attacker that's dealing damage to something, so this is likely to be noticed, and noticed quite often. I'll give you another example. That's Vengeful Pharaoh from M12, which says whenever combat damage is dealt to you, or a Planeswalker you control, if Vengeful Pharaoh is in your graveyard, destroy target attacking creature and then put Vengeful Pharaoh on top of your library. So, this is a little bit more subversive. This is a similar ability, but it's on the defending side. How do you know if you were the head that got hit by the damage? Now, I can see the more competitive amongst you kind of squirming in your seats a bit and thinking, ooh, can I trick them? Can I somehow... How do I tell them that it's important that they say which one of us took the damage without cluing them off to the idea that there's a Vengeful Pharaoh in my graveyard and I don't want them to see it. I want to trip them up. The shortcut rules come to your aid here. When the 2 players sit down, the player on the right, so the player that doesn't have any players to their right, is considered to be the primary player. And it only matters for a tiny fraction of things, but one of the things it matters for is that player, the primary player, by default is the guy who would take the damage. If the attacking team don't say who they're damaging, then it's perfectly allowable to assume that the primary player took the damage. So when you've got your Vengeful Pharaoh in one of your decks, put it in the right-hand player's deck, always. That's the trick. Put it in the right-hand player's deck. And what will happen when they hit you, and you kind of whistle a little bit and go, Combat damage. Being so, you can just slam your Vengeful Pharaoh on top of your library and destroy an attacking creature. And when they go, Judge, we didn't say who it was going to damage, and obviously we picked the other one. Well, by default, you lose. Of course, I'll caveat this. Regular rules enforcement level, casual event, friendly atmosphere. Hopefully this won't happen. Hopefully. But if it were to happen at competitive rules enforcement level, or if you do have a disagreement between the players, the shortcut says it's the primary player, you're going absolutely by the book. If the primary player's got the Vengeful Pharaoh in the graveyard, they're getting it on top, and they learn a valuable lesson about declaring combat damage in Two-Headed Giant, which is nice. That's it about combat. Let's have another think about life total. So I said at the top of the programme that, of course, you've only got one life total. The players individually don't have life totals. They just share one. The team has a life total. And it even spells out in this FAQ that I'm reading from that in a change from previous rules, and in order to make Two-Headed Giant more intuitive, players share a life total and teams receive poison counters. So players don't get poison counters, teams do. Players don't have life totals, the team does. And if an effect asks you, hey, what's your life total? Then you'll answer with what your team's life total is. Here's an example. Serret Ascendant will get +5/+5 as long as you have 30 or more life. So when Serret Ascendant goes, hey, have you got 30 or more life? You'll go, yes, I do, because my life total is 30 right at the start of the game. How fantastic is that? You've got a 1-drop 6/6 flying lifelinker that does happen to die to Electrolyze, but sure, it's a pretty good card in Two-Headed Giant. And I'll snap back to camera to say, yeah, Two-Headed Giant, valuations of cards change significantly. So if you're looking for some strategy advice here, which I'm normally completely useless at, I can't play this game for the life of me, but Serret Ascendant is suddenly a very much better card. Because it only is looking for a life total of 30, unlike, say, Chalice of Life, which is looking for a life total of 10 higher than your starting life total, which might be a direct response to this life change. Do you know what other card is really, really funny with this rules change? I'll let you read it for a moment. Heartless Hidetsugu. It deals to each player damage equal to half that player's life total, rounded down. So what's your life total? Oh, it's 16. Okay, so I'll deal you 8. And your partner, what's your life total? 16. Okay, so I'll deal half that damage, that's 8. So I'm dealing you 8, I'm doing you 8. That means I'm dealing your team 16 damage. Yes, that's right. In Two-Headed Giant, Heartless Hidetsugu will kill any team on an even amount of life. And if you're on an odd amount of life, you're just left alive at 1. Isn't that fantastic? Thankfully, Heartless Hidetsugu is many years old and hardly likely to be seen in a Two-Headed Giant limited event, and as we'll cover in a little bit, Two-Headed Giant Constructed doesn't really happen. So yes, Heartless Hidetsugu changes the game completely to, it's kind of tiptoeing around each other to say, are you on an even life total? Because I can kill you. If an effect would cause a player to gain or lose life, then what you do is you calculate the amount that would be gained or lost and you apply it to the team's life total. There's a card that cares about this, and that's Ajani's Pridemate. Ajani's Pridemate is worded so that whenever you gain life, you may put a +1/+1 counter on Ajani's Pridemate. Now, this is kind of important here. If I gain life, so if I actually cast a spell that says I gain life, like this one, I gain the life. The result is applied to my team's life total. And whilst that effectively means that my partner's life total has gone up, so in the normal English definition of the word, you might trick yourself into believing that my teammate has gained life. In Magic rules, it's not true. For Ajani's Pridemate to trigger, it has to be that player that's gained the life, and not just incidentally that their life total has gone up because their teammate happened to gain life. A similar effect can happen with cards that set life total like this one. So we've got Magister Sphinx. that sets a player's life total to 10. That will set the team's life total to 10. Now, if the team's life total previously was only 5, then you actually set a life total to 10 by gaining 5 life. But the player who gains the life is the player whose life total was changed to 10. Do you follow that one? It's tricky. But gaining life means gaining life and not just happening to have your life total raised because of an effect. There's one tricksy card here, Biorhythm, that tries to set every player's life total at the same time. And this can be interesting because if each player's life total becomes the number of creatures he or she controls, it's entirely possible that me and my partner control different numbers of creatures. So Biorhythm is at the same time trying to set my life total to something and trying to set my partner's life total to something, but they're the same life total. We share that life total. So how do we resolve this? Well, you just choose one of the players to be affected. If 2 players on the team were going to have their life total set at the same time, you just choose one. And again, it's that player who actually gained or lost a life. So if our team's currently at 5 life, and I've got 3 creatures, and my teammate's got 7, then we can either choose me, and our life total would drop to 3 by me losing 2 life, or we could choose my teammate, and our life total would raise to 7 by him gaining 2 life. So I hope I've got that across. The life gain effect applies to the head only. The shared life total is affected, but abilities that would trigger off of life gain or loss even only apply to that particular head. There he is, the guy that cares. And I didn't realise this one until I was doing my preparation yesterday for the stream. But if you infect a team, because you put the poison counter on the team, then if you then try to use the proliferate ability on a card like Viral Drake here, you can only give the team 1 additional poison counter, because I don't have any poison counters and my teammate doesn't have any poison counters, so you can't choose to proliferate on both players like you might think you can. You can in fact only proliferate on the team, which just serves to make two-headed giants just that little bit more resilient to poison counters. Finally then, wrapping up this section on two-headed giant, we've got a little section on team and individual effects. This tells you that the word you on a card means just that. It means you. It does not include your teammate. You are you. You're your own head, even if you are actually stitched to the other head. You are your own head. You means you. So creatures you control get +1/+1 means only your ones. Only the ones on your side will actually trigger. There's a very interesting subtle piece of wording on some cards that it's not entirely obvious that it has an application in Two-Headed Giant, but it does here. I'm going to try and show you the difference between these two cards. Verdant Force has a trigger that it gives you saplings. That's not the important part. The important part is at the beginning of each upkeep, you do something. There's one upkeep in every turn. So on my team's turn, we would have an upkeep and get a sapling. In the opposing team's turn, there is one upkeep, so they get a sapling. So we get a second sapling, sorry. Contrast this to the wording of the trigger on Luminarch Ascension, which says at the beginning of each opponent's end step. Blah, 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 blah. Don't worry about the rest of the words. At the beginning of each opponent's end step. Now, in a turn, there's only one end step. But if I've got two opponents and they're both having an end step at the same time, then what I'm experiencing is two opponents' end steps. I'll try and let that one sink in for a bit. The best analogy I can come up with is the term man hours. You might have heard of man hours, and apologies to all my female viewers. If you've got one person watches something for 2 hours, you can say that they spent 2 man hours watching that thing. If you've got 2 people and they watch it for 1 hour, you can still say that 2 man hours were spent watching your thing. Even though it was only 1 actual hour, the fact that it was kind of multiplied up by the 2 watchers meant you had 2 man hours. And that's where they're going for with this one. Each opponent's end step. If I've got 2 opponents and they share 1 end step, then I have 2 opponents' end steps. So that means Luminarch Ascension triggers twice at the end of that team's turn. And if I didn't lose life this turn, then I can put a quest counter on. So I can get 2 quest counters on, which means Luminarch Ascension can be active within like 2 turns of casting it, and you can be making angels everywhere. Which means this is a very, very good card in Two-Headed Giant. Broken, in fact. You heard it here first. You probably didn't hear it here first. If you played Two-Headed Giant Zendikar at all, you almost certainly know about this card. But if you didn't, you do now. Don't even expect there to be consistency across cycles. I want to show you, obviously from the same cycle, Bloodchief Ascension, also a Zendikar rare. That does something at the beginning of each end step. If an opponent lost 2 or more life this turn, you may put a quest counter on. And it doesn't matter how many opponents lost the 2 or more life in this case. We got to the beginning of the end step, and some opponent lost 2 or more life, then you can put a quest counter on. So this doesn't get accelerated in any way. It's still a good card. Don't get me wrong with that. It's fine. It's just not so completely pumped by Two-Headed Giant as Luminarch Ascension is. Okay, next bullet point on the FAQ. If a player would skip or get an extra step, phase or turn, then the player's team skips or gets one instead. And I managed to find a card for both parts of that example. Savour the Moment is, in my view, a tragically underplayed card from Shadowmoor, which lets you take an extra turn after this one and skip the untapped step of that turn. So if you're getting an extra turn, well, you're inseparable from your head. Your other head will get the extra turn with you, and you're going to skip the untapped step. That means there isn't an untapped step. It doesn't happen, so your teammate doesn't get one either. So you both get the extra turn, you both skip the unstap step? What am I talking about? You'll skip the untap step of that turn. There's a downside to that. If you get mind-slavered, your team gets mind-slavered because, well, I don't have a good reason for this one. It quite clearly says you control target player during that player's next turn. Yeah, you get the whole team's turn. Brutal, absolutely brutal. Finally, if an effect refers to each opponent, it applies to each player on the opposing team. And if an effect applies to each player, then, well, it does exactly that. It applies to each player. So, for example, Flame Rift would deal 4 damage to each player. Ultimately, that means that each team would lose 8 life. Because the 2 players that are on the team, they're separate players. They each take 4 damage and take 8 in total. That's it for Two-Headed Giant Limited. I'll have a brief word about Two-Headed Giant Constructed, purely because it has a banned list. There is one card that is banned in Two-Headed Giant Constructed, and it's this card here, Areo Soritami Ascendant. It's banned because it's so incredibly easy to flip, and once it's flipped, it has such a massive effect. Whenever the 4th spell of a turn is played, flip Areo. Now, because me and my teammate are both casting spells in the same turn, the chances of us doing 4 spells in the same turn is very easy. So we get it flipped, and the first spell by each opponent then gets countered. So both of the opposing heads. Wow. Yeah, it's terrible. By which I mean it's amazing. It's an amazing card. It's an absolutely terrible effect having the game. It just absolutely steamrollers. Now, from what I gather, this was early on in the life of Two-Headed Giant. They experimented with some constructive events, and Areo was completely broken, and so they responded by banning it, which is absolutely fantastic. The fact that there's no other cards on the banned list, not Luminarch Ascension, which is quite good, not Heartless Hidetsugu, which is really random, it leads me to think that Wizards aren't maybe particularly supporting Two-Headed Giant Constructed. I absolutely would support any store who did some Two-Headed Giant Constructed to add a few extra cards to the banned list and run a tournament like that. If you can do something casually, then yeah, by all means go ahead and do this. I think Two-Headed Giant Constructed does sound like quite an interesting format. as long as you realise that it's totally different to one-on-one play. Even if you're playing Standard, a deck that's good in Standard might not necessarily be good at all in Two-Headed Giant. If everybody's going to turn up to a Two-Headed Giant event with their Standard decks, and so you're just happening to put two individual decks together and hope they work, you're going to lose to a team who has a synergistic pairing, where I'm playing stuff that's deliberately built to work with my teammates' stuff, and where we've got this massive two-pronged attack on you. So yeah, I think Two-Headed Giant constructed could be a perfectly fine format to play. I think it's a bit of a shame it doesn't get played all that much. I'm sure there are cards that are absolutely broken, even more so than Arrayo, that are out there, but I'll leave it to you to find them should you play. And that's it. That's everything I wanted to cover from this Two-Headed Giant FAQ. Amazingly, everything I've just gone through, I've done a 40-minute long recording about Two-Headed Giant rules, and it's all come from 2 sheets of paper that are available on the International Magic Judges Wiki. If you're thrust suddenly into a Two-Headed Giant judging position, maybe at the side event of a Grand Prix or something along those lines, in 2 pages you know pretty much everything you need to about the format. Look at that. Absolutely fantastic. I would love to credit the author of this FAQ. I don't know who it is. The fact that Fabian Peck brought it to my attention, because it might be him. If it was, then go you. Fantastic work. I'll also point out, for those of you who are thinking of doing judge tests at some point, Two-Headed Giant questions exist. I don't think you need to do anything more than read that FAQ, just the 2 pages, and you'll pick up on everything you need to know for the questions that will show up on a Two-Headed Giant question in a judge test. You should know it's out there, and I'd hate for any of you to fail a test by 1 question and there had been a Two-Headed Giant question in there and you weren't able to get it. You're absolutely capable of doing that. I'm going to keep the stream going for a bit if you have any questions that you want to ask, but I'm going to end the recording now. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. Piece of news that I just want to share. I was contacted by Charlotte Sable yesterday, and she was like, hey, if you want to co-host something and have me join in like via Skype or something, that'd be really cool. And that got me thinking. I thought, how on earth do you do that? I don't have another seat here. I have no idea how to like mix stuff together from Skype, but I figured it out. I've downloaded all the software. It's amazing resources on the internet if you want to do this kind of thing. So here's an open invitation. If you want to be part of this streaming series, you want to do a bit of a two-headed stream. Do you see what I did there? Yeah. If you want to be part of this stream and do a bit of a two-headed production on some kind of topic, it would be fantastic. If you've got a Skype account, that's all you need. I'm sure you can sign up for those easily. Get in touch with me and let's discuss what we can talk about. Until then, enjoy Pancake Day. I haven't had my pancakes yet. I'm going to be going to them soon. I hope that Pancake Day is a global phenomenon that everybody knows about, otherwise I've just made myself look quite silly. Look it up on Wikipedia, otherwise. Bye-bye. Hope you enjoyed the episode. See you again next week, where I will be... What am I doing next week? I'm going to GP Madrid. I am going to GP Madrid this weekend, and I'm going to be head judge of not the GP, because that's a little bit above my station. But I will be head judge of the Legacy Championships on the Sunday, which I'm really looking forward to. It does give me the earliest start time of any of the side events, so if you're on my team for that, well, sorry. But we're going to have lots of fun, and any stuff that comes out of GP Madrid, I'll be chatting about next Tuesday. So I won't have a specific topic, it'll just be stuff that happened at the Grand Prix. Excellent. Bye-bye.